with critical thinking, my audience hears it all the time, is you got to ask yourself, how am I wrong? How am I wrong? I can think about all this stuff all day long, but there's no such thing as a vacuum in nature, and the media tells you only so much information, the government releases only so much information, and then it's left with an information vacuum. Now we've got questions and thoughts and considerations and all these things. They rush to fill it. That's where our conspiracy theories come from. But we're not stupid people. No. By and large, you said most Americans, they love this country. They do know how to think for themselves. You know, we got this guy that killed the senators and their spouses, or shot the senators and their spouses up there in Minnesota, and they don't want to release that guy's manifesto. So now everybody's got to be at each other's throat on social media trying to speculate over what in the world happened. Happened with the Covenant School shooting in Nashville. I want to release the manifesto. Release the damn manifesto. Let us come to our own conclusions on this thing.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of The Resilient Show. This episode is going to be a little bit different for two things. One is we're going to talk about Iran and the U.S. Bombing of the Iran nuclear facilities a little bit, and it's going to be a little bit delayed, so maybe a week delayed on some of that information. But I want to talk about it anyway because right now, as we sit here, Iran's attempting to. We're just saying before, it's like they got knocked out and then they got up and tried to push the person that knocked them out. So they're firing 6 rockets at Qatar, which was knocked out of the sky, or seven rockets at Qatar. Anyway, they were shot out of the sky. Our troops are safe, but we'll talk about that. And what else is different is that we have Chad Prather on the show, and Chad is not our typical resilient guest. It's a little bit of a curveball for the type of guests we've been having, but I've been friends with Chad for a long time and really have wanted him on the show. So if you guys don't know Chad, I'm gonna give a little bit of an overview of him. Chad Prather is a comedian, commentator, musician, author, and unapologetically Texan voice of the people. He rose to fame with his viral videos blending humor, cultural commentary, and cowboy wisdom. He has not let off the gas since he's done that. And he is the host of the Chad Prather Show, which I've been on several times now, at an independent platform where he speaks plainly about faith, freedom, and the fights we face as a nation. Chad's toured nationally as a stand-up comedian, musician, motivational speaker. He's built a loyal following across the political and entertainment worlds, and even ran for governor of the great state of Texas with a message rooted in political liberty and common sense. Chad represents something essential to resilience: the power to speak boldly, laugh in the face of adversity, and stay grounded in truth when the culture tries to cancel it. He's got grit, conviction, and the rare courage to say what many people are thinking. And more importantly, Chad's my friend and a fellow Texan, my neighbor.
Yeah.
So welcome to the Resilient Show, man. It's great to finally do this. We've been talking about it forever.
Yeah, and I love the studio. I obviously love you and Kathy. Love everything you guys are doing. Love your voice. The last time I was here, there was a porta potty outside.
That's right.
Now you have indoor plumbing.
Yeah. That's when we're still doing we're doing it under a state dangerous banner.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
This is, you guys you can't hide money, dude. I'm telling you, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
This is great.
Well, actually we did, because if you look at it from the road, it's just a metal building.
I love it, though. It's perfect.
You come in and it's hidden.
I drive down this road all the time, and if I've got friends with me, I always look, and I said, that's where Chad Robichaux's studio is, right there. You're passing greatness.
That's right.
There it is.
It is. It's not great just because of me. It's because we got good guests like you.
I love it.
And you've moved your studio because you were at the Blaze with Glenn.
Yeah,
for a long time. 6 years.
And I think technically I'm still a contributor with them. Okay. I don't know. I need to look, see if money shows up every month. I'm not quite sure. But still a great family, still great friends. But I just felt really impressed and led 2 years ago to go independent. And that's been a challenge with the Chad Prather Show, but it's been good.
Right, because I mean, when you're at the Blaze, you have all the resources that come with Glenn Beck, and right,
you don't have to worry about having a producer and the studio and the cameras and the equipment, and they turn the lights on for you. Doing what I did, I just really kind of stepped out. I'm 52 years old, and so at 50, I said, man, let's reinvent ourselves yet again. And it's been a blessing, and I say that because the Blaze never censored me in any way. They never got onto me for saying anything. They're very much free speech, and they want the people to be themselves that host those shows. They were a blessing for that season in my life. But I felt, I felt like really impressed to go out and kind of take a biblical worldview, a biblical, outlook at life, and apply it to what's going on in the headlines. And so I've been doing more and more of that, which is a huge change from a lot of the stuff I used to do where I was kind of boisterous and mocking and ridiculing and making fun of stuff, kind of the wild man aspect. Yeah. But something strange happened to me 2 years ago. You know, I just really felt the Lord put his hands on my shoulders and start pressing down. And, you know, when that happens, it's not a comfortable thing. And I said, okay, what do you want? Like, what are you asking me to do? And he said, I made a lot of deposits in you when you were a young man, and now I'm ready to make some withdrawals in a significant way. And I was like, well, you know, it's inconvenient, but let's go. So the last 2 years have been quite the challenge, quite the adventure, but a blessing as well. So,
well, I think in that aspect, your journey is kind of because you started there, right? You're when as a communicator, you started in the church world.
Yeah, I pastored. I went to the University of Georgia, then I went to seminary, and then I traveled all over the world. Spent a lot of time in third world countries, doing mission work, humanitarian aid work, medical work, those kind of things. And I was pastoring, and I jokingly, I tell you, we've talked about this before. I was a great preacher. I was a terrible pastor, especially in the American church, because I've got just a little bit of that black and white prophetic edge to me where I just tell things the way they are. Some people say that I'm stirring the pot. I don't mean it that way. I'm really not trying to be controversial. But these days, people really want their problems understood rather than fixed. And I think that's just a human nature thing, because if you take their problems away, they lose their identity. This self-created sense of oppression that we have going on in our country has infiltrated our churches in a big way, and it's just kind of numbed us to truth. And so I did what I did, and then I just felt the Lord kind of pull me away from the church ministry as it stood, and just sort of a different type of, if you will, a marketplace ministry, I guess. I went through a few years of rebellion too. You know, you're angry with God. Yeah. You know, why didn't my mentors love me the right way? So now I'm manufacturing my own oppression, right? until it's like, hey, quit navel gazing, pick your head up, and let's use our voice for something good.
It's interesting though you say that you liked preaching but not pastoring, because I get that. Like as a guest speaker, I love going to speak at churches. But I don't have to deal with their problems when I leave. In fact, I was speaking yesterday at a church and Church on the Move in Roswell, New Mexico. Pastor Troy there, amazing person, and I've said, hey, as a guest speaker, I'm going to drop this theological bomb, and I'm going to walk away, and Pastor Troy's going to get to deal with it for the rest of the year. Yeah. And so, you know, you get to walk away and not deal with people, and I always joke, like, in ministry would be easy without people, and that's one of the gifts of being a guest speaker.
You're a guest speaker. You go in there and drop the bombs, and then they get the emails on Monday. You know?
Exactly. But I'm trying not to scare away any pastors. Like, still book me, but I promise I won't. But the communication side of it for pastors and speakers and comedians is actually, there's a lot of intersection there, and a lot of pastors won't admit it, but I know them behind the scenes. There's a lot of pastors that secretly watch comedians because professional comedians have to know how to hold an audience for 45 minutes on the edge of their seat.
You mentioned me running for office, and I did that in the gubernatorial primary here in Texas in 22, and a lot of people didn't take me seriously because I have a comedy background.
Right.
And they thought I was joking. They thought it was one big prank. And I had to remind people that when a comedian walks on stage, he's got about 90 to 120 seconds to analyze an audience in a room and own them to the point where you can bring them together, and you take a subjective matter that, you know, called humor, because everybody's sense of humor is not the same. And let's get them all in the one place, get everybody laughing, and then they can leave sort of with a unified mind of saying, hey, that was great. You remember what he said? This was funny. And they got a line, you know, or a point to kind of hang your hat on. Churches are interesting. The American church and the comedy clubs, there's two places that I believe free speech has truly been under attack, and it's in those two places where they should be the bastions of free speech. Right. They should be the places where when you walk in, you should expect to be stretched by the words you hear. So if you go in the church, you should be challenged,
convicted, challenged,
every bit of that. I mean, you ought to, you know, that preacher ought to preach when he's done standing on 6 inches of his pants leg because he preached so hard, man. He was so fired up about the truth, and you ought to feel that need for transformation and change, right? The comedy club as well should challenge you because it turns a mirror on you, and it should make you laugh at yourself. But these days, preachers, rather than preaching the gospel or preaching convicting truth or preaching motivational and inspiring messages, which has a time and a place. Sure. But you have comedians who are, rather than working for laughs, are working for applause and approval because they don't want to get canceled. And so you see kind of a strange thing happening, the interesting similar dynamics that are happening in those two platforms.
But the people have responded differently. I was kind of jumping up and down about this a few years ago when especially when a lot of the woke stuff first came out and the pastors were being silent. I was getting on social media and calling pastors out like, hey, like if you're going to stand in a pulpit on a Sunday, you in a community, you better have the moral courage to speak about the sexual indoctrination of children in your community, the sexual mutilization of children in your community, about the right for life. If you don't have the courage to do that, you step off that pulpit because you got to go find another job. And so you see a lot of pastors like care more about numbers in their seats than souls in heaven, and care more about their tithes and things like that. But there was a lot of pastors that actually did stand up. I mean, Jack Hibbs in California, Alan Jackson in Tennessee. Yeah. You have a lot of pastors here locally that have. And what I saw was when they stood up boldly like that, about where I was Pastor Troy in New Mexico. But those pastors, when they stood up boldly doing that, they did have some exits in the beginning, but their long-term numbers blew up. Yeah, because people were seeking what you're talking about. People were seeking truth. That's why people watch you, right? Because people want to hear truth.
And it's interesting, as I said earlier, whenever I felt like God just kind of put his hands on my shoulders and started pressing down, one of the big things that he impressed me to do was prior to the election back in November was to every morning pray publicly and write and post a biblical prayer with the scripture references in the prayer and post it on my social media platforms, which was a huge change from a guy who's used to posting jokes and sitting in the front seat of his truck and ranting about cultural and daily observations with humor. And then I put it over on X, which is a cesspool over there, and I expected mass persecution to come my way for putting that kind of stuff on there. So I did that for 30 days leading up to the election, and then I felt impressed to continue doing it. Now, I'm not still doing it daily, but I'm still doing it about 5 days a week, and I'm still putting it over there. The reaction to that has been phenomenal. Even on places like X, people are asking for it. They're wanting it. People are wanting the truth. It's exalting Christ as Lord. Jesus is King. The kingdom is here. The kingdom has a way of doing things. The Father wants to bring people into the fold and the family. He's seeking the lost. It's that message, but it's a message of encouragement because people are disenfranchised. They're not connected. There's no sense of community. They're not hearing truth. And that's happening in a big way in the American church. Like you said, they're worried about, do the fountains work out in front of the church? Are the shrubs cut? Does the coffee taste good? Is the atmosphere, is the music the right volume, and is the air conditioner set right? Those aren't the things we should be focused on. And the Lord 2 years ago just really impressed him upon me that verse in the book of Revelation that says, they overcame by the blood of the Lamb, the word of their testimony. And then that third part we don't like, they love not their life even unto death. Mm-hmm. And I go, wow, that's a message that we're not hearing right now.
Break that down for me. Because to me, that's the two-step plan.
Yeah.
To overcome the spiritual warfare that we're in, right? The blood of the Lamb, which is Jesus on the cross, that's already been done for us. We can't do that. But the word of our testimony is us speaking about our testimony in relationship with Christ. But what's the third part?
And they love not their life even unto death. The first century disciples of Jesus. Jesus gave us one final mandate. Matthew 28, of course, the Great Commission is retold in all the different Gospels. But go therefore and make disciples of all the nations. The word disciple in the Greek language, mathetes, we get mathematics from that. So he's literally saying, go out and multiply me in the earth. Mm-hmm. So and teach them all I've commanded you to do, baptizing. And when you do that, he says, I'll be with you until the end of the age. That's how you get the presence of the Spirit of God in your life, empowerment, when you're out there making disciples. They literally turn the entire known world upside down without a telephone, telethon, television, but just tell a person. And that's the way they did it with that 3-part deal. They did it by the blood of the Lamb, the word of their testimony, and love not their life even unto death. Every one of them died. Mm-hmm. They tried to kill John. They boiled him in oil. He didn't die. Mm-hmm. So they exiled him to the Isle of Patmos. But these guys were literally, as Jesus said in Acts 1:8, he says, go there. He says, you'll be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, the uttermost parts of the earth. The word witness, martyrio, is martyr. He's literally said, you're dead men on furlough. I'm sending you out as dead men. The physical part hasn't hit you yet, but you're dead.
Yeah,
This is a suicide mission. And that's what turned the world upside down. And we literally, if you look, Chad, we had, with this open border crisis, which obviously we don't approve of, and however many millions of people came to our border, 165 different nations each year represented in encounters at the southern border. We literally had the mission field brought to us, and we weren't ready for it. The church wasn't ready for it. There's some that were, but by and large, the American church was too insulated in their comfort zones and in their overblown sense of that spiritual bubble that we weren't ready for that mission field. The ends of the earth came to us. They're still here. I mean, what are we talking about right now? We're talking about splinter cells, sleeper cells of Iranians in our neighborhoods. And they're here.
They're here.
And where's the church? Now, it's easy for me, as we said, it's easy for me to sit outside and cast judgment and point fingers and say the church should be doing this. I've got my own personal mandate in that Great Commission to be doing that myself. So which
is a shift you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we've so long separated, we've created a dichotomy of the secular versus the sacred. It's all sacred. If you make it sacred, it's all sacred. You know, all the preacher does the ministry work or the person that works at the church. That's not true. We know that. You know, we've separated the sacred from the secular type of job, and that's not the case. So we've all got a mandate on us to make those disciples, to be his witness. And I just said, I've got a platform. I've got however many millions of people that watch me, look at me, pay attention to the things I say. And I said, I told somebody this morning, I said, I'm literally trying to spend whatever time I have left on this planet, however many years I have left, to put as much truth out there as I possibly can, because we're not promised anything. And if I've been given this platform, I like to have fun. I still make jokes. Yeah. You have the best Instagram because it's so irreverently funny with people doing dumb things, winning the Darwin Award. And I know you catch flack for posting those things.
Oh, yeah, I do. But I don't.
And I'm like, if you ever stop, I'm going to come and look you up and say,
it's who I am. It's my humor. It's what makes me move. Yeah,
I love it. And I love it. And so I keep saying, I'm down to have fun with you guys, and I'll put stuff out there, and people say, oh, really? Is Jesus pleased with you posting this? Yeah, I think he is.
I think he has a sense of humor.
I think, the Bible says in Ephesians 1.
He gave me a sense of humor.
It says, blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who has blessed us with every spiritual blessing in the heavenly realms in Christ. The word blessed, we get our word happy from that.
Yeah.
He's a happy God. He didn't wake up on the wrong side of the bed. He's not in a bad mood today. I mean, that's all been satisfied in Christ. So we can laugh. We can actually have some joy about it. And if somebody, climbing up on a ladder that breaks and falls and that person breaks their leg, I'm going to laugh at it because they did something stupid.
Yeah.
And, I'll let God sort it out later on with me.
If he didn't have a sense of humor, he would have maybe 5'4" with the ego.
So I laughed so hard a couple of years ago. You told me that one of your critics had sent a message and said, man, if I had ears like that, I'd kill myself too.
Yeah. I was on Dave Rubin's show talking about the deep, dark battle I had with suicide, and he comments, if I had ears like that, looked in the mirror, I'd kill myself too.
I came
so
in here.
I posted it.
I love that, dude. You got to be able to laugh at yourself. We're too thin-skinned. People are so easily offended by everything. And I joke, I said, listen, I don't care if you're gay, straight, black, white, male, female, fat, skinny, identifies he, him, she, her, they, them, or she, him. I want to make fun of you. I don't care because I'm going to spend 85% of the time making fun of myself. I should be able to make fun of you too, and we should be able to have a good time with that. I joked when I walked in here, I said, whenever I see Chad, I said, he's 5 foot tall, but I know he could kill me with one hand. And so, I meet that man with respect. I sort of want to do the Brazilian jiu-jitsu thing and just get down on the ground and just kind of come at you,
Scoot on
my rear end and come at you. But I can't get down on the floor because I can't get back up.
As you're talking about that, I'm sitting here thinking like we've kind of had a different trajectory in this, but I think we're landing in the same place because I spent, since 2011 in ministry, building a platform in ministry. And then I realized this platform I built belonged outside of the walls of ministry as well. And God really prompted me to expand that audience in a different direction to reach more people. Yeah. And so this show particularly, it was very intentional that this was not a Christian show. I'm always going to get my biblical worldview on this show, no matter who I'm talking to, but I'm not bringing only Christian believers on as guests. It's not a criteria to come on as a guest. And I'm going to talk openly about that. But I think we land in the same place where we're taking our own biblical worldview, our own convictions, and spreading them to a broad audience.
Yeah, I think that's the key. And that is that paradigm, right? And you see everything through that filtered network of ultimately my faith is the framework for it. I put out a T-shirt, we have that apparel deal, and we put out a T-shirt a few years ago that some people loved it, some people hated it, where it said, this was my testimony, it said, I have whiskey stains on my Bible. And a lot of people were like, oh, how dare you? And I was like, no, that's literally the truth. Because I went through a period of time, I was looking for a reality in drugs, alcohol, women, fulfillment, the approval of people, the audience, the crowd. I was looking for those things. And in all of that, I kept realizing that there was no reality in the bottom of that bottle. And the thing that changed me was the faith of my childhood that brought me back into a place of saying, okay, look, this stuff, not all of this is going to live forever. It's not going to last forever. This isn't eternal. And there's some things in you that God's not going to take to heaven. That's that sanctifying process where you go, okay, but I can still have fun, right? Yeah, I can still talk with normal men, right? I can still, had somebody that mentioned the other day, they said, well, you preach a good word now, but you might do another broadcast where you drop an F-bomb. And I go, and you might overeat tomorrow. Or have spiritual pride about not using an F-bomb. Like I'm really trying to please my mother and my Lord with fewer F-bombs these days.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I don't think that God's as offended by the things that we are. And you have to be a real person. I think that's what the world's starving for. To say, listen, you can have, and you've had some stone cold killers on this show, and it's sitting in this room with you. And you've seen some things around this world. I've seen some things from a different perspective and a different experience. But at the end of the day, that's what's real. And I think people are searching for what's real. Yeah. And if at the foundation of that, it's your faith, sprinkle that stuff in there.
Yeah.
I think that's the seasoning.
How'd you start in this? I mean, again, we mentioned you were a preacher in ministry, but I mean, you started from a cell phone in your truck, right?
Yeah.
What made you do that the first time? Like pick up your phone and say,
well, there was a guy by the name of Trey Chapman up in Fort Worth, Texas. And his father was a rancher, and he kind of came from wealth, and he was sort of a socialite up there, and we'd give each other a hard time. He's a good old boy. And every day we would just kind of pick up our cell phones while we were sitting in traffic, and I would send a 15-second insult to him, and then he would respond with a 15-second insult back to me. And so people in Fort Worth started watching this stuff. And so at the time I'd been doing radio, and then I got a television show, doing a travel television show that was about horses and humor and all of this, and people just trying to kill themselves on horses. We went everywhere from stuntman ranches to like Walt Scott's place out in Hollywood to, stagecoach races to mounted shooting. We were doing all this stuff. And I thought to myself in that TV experience during the first season, I said, social media, Facebook and YouTube, like it's kind of like owning your own TV network. Mm-hmm. And I could put whatever content I want. Yeah. And so I just popped the camera up on the dashboard of the truck, and had no idea when I did that millions of people were going to start watching this stuff. And so the next thing I know, I'm out in Hollywood. I'm represented by Lionsgate. I've got management. I've got agency out there. And I'm writing sitcoms for the networks, and they're flying me to LA all the time. And then, of course, COVID hits and all that stuff kind of changed. But I was like, I had a comedian friend in 2015 who said, you got this big following, why don't you go out there and do comedy? I said, well, I'm not really a comic. And he goes, who cares? If they're buying tickets, tell them stories. What difference does it make? But I tried to honor the craft of comedy, and so it started a massive tour, massive audience. And then I said, well, I can play the guitar, sort of. Let's write funny songs. And so we started doing that. And then when COVID hit, there was a lot of musicians that couldn't work because everything was shut down. So I brought them on, and I said, well, I can go to places like Wyoming where they've never even heard of COVID, and we can do shows up there. Yeah. And so just one thing just kind of piled on top of it. And so a lot of times folks will ask, what is it you do? And I'm like, yes, all of it.
I've been, you've invited me. I've got to sit front row at your comedy show before, and it's different. And it's so good because when you kind of the music and you just engage the whole audience is engaged in part of the show. Yeah,
I just have fun with it. Now I'm really asking the Lord to open up more doors. We were talking about it, to kind of go back to my roots of kind of motivating and inspiring, but using humor. I was just out there at that White Rose Resistance, The Last Stand, Seth Gruber's organization out there.
That's a great mission, man.
Yeah, you mentioned the pastor of the church there, and Jack Hibbs, and we were out there. I don't know, they probably had about 1,200, 1,500 people at that thing. And Seth, I said, Seth, what do you want me to do? Because I've talked pro-life since I was in college. I used to write articles for the campus newspaper at the University of Georgia and debate life, And he said, I just want you to make them laugh. And so that's what we did. We went out there, but we made a point, but we went out there and made them laugh. Yeah. And there's something refreshing about that. We need that. Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you're at the pro-life.
Dude, the pro-life you guys love topic. They love to be preached at, man. Yeah. People do. They love. I mean, it was like 14 hours of one person after another coming out there and just laying truth out. I was like, man, you guys are responsible for a lot of stuff you're receiving today.
He put a lineup together.
Big time.
Yeah, it was a good lineup.
Big time.
So I couldn't make it because I was at this other event, but he's been a powerful voice in pro-life movement. I'm super proud of him. Very smart. He's
guy.
so quick-witted. He's got that quick-wit speech like you. I think he's faster than you.
He's pretty fast.
Yeah.
And when he starts talking about Marxism and
Yeah.
socialism and stuff like that, he rattles that stuff off. Those dates and figures and times I just sit back and watch.
We should do a competition.
Man, that's crazy. So the reason my shtick for the longest time was how fast can I talk? Because I thought nobody wants to listen to a talking head sitting in the truck on social media for more than at least a minute. So I want to see how many words I can get into 60 seconds and how much I can get out of there. My mother would watch it and she said, I just want to breathe for you because you're not, you're turning red. And so for the longest time, it was how fast can I get that information out?
Yeah.
And it sort of kind of became a funny shtick. Yeah.
Your dog's in the back seat getting nervous.
Dog's back there, and God did a miracle. God brought my dog back. Willie, my shepherd. He was personal protection, and I went through a divorce a number of years ago, and she took the dog. She took 3 dogs, but that was my dog.
That sounds like a country song.
I know. Well, my buddy Bobby Pinson, who wrote a ton of songs for Toby Keith, I told him the story. He goes, "I'm going to write that song. Who takes the dog? Who takes your dog?" And he did, and it was funny. And a couple of months ago, she's engaged to be married again, and they bought a new house, and she was not going to be able to keep this dog. And I said, "Please, can I have my dog back?" And it was like we hadn't missed a day. Like 3 or 4 years we'd been apart, and we hadn't missed a day. So
that's
he's
awesome.
back.
Yeah. How are your kids?
They're great, man. I just married off my daughter. So I got 3 girls, 27, 25, and 21, and then my 18-year-old son. Now get this, Chad. My oldest daughter's 27. She is a teacher in Alabama, and she'd been engaged with this guy. She'd been dating this guy for about 2 years. He's pastor's son. He's 7th in line with his siblings. And they said, we want to get married with just family on the beach, because I was going to take them on a family vacation. And they said, we want to get married. Will you marry us? And I was like, yeah, I'd love to. And I said, I'm going to cry all the way through it. You know this, right? Mm-hmm. So I gave her away and married her off. Yeah, I always say you tie a knot with your tongue that you can't untie with your teeth. But I was so blessed because my son-in-law, he came to me before the thing, and he said, I want you to know we've had a pure relationship, and we're marrying as virgins, and we've honored God in this. And I said, man,
yeah,
what that does to a dad's heart. I mean, it's incredible. And my 25-year-old daughter, she's a professional dancer. She went to school. She called me when she was 17. She said, I'm visiting this college. I'm going to major in dance. I said, that's not a major. She graduated with a degree in dance.
Yeah, I remember when she was started. I remember when you talked to me about her starting that.
I was like, somebody will talk her out of this, and I was trying to choose my battle. But she went to work for Disney a number of years ago, and she tours with Frozen on ice, on the skating deal. And she was Elsa. And you know how problematic it is when you got a daughter that grows up to be an actual Disney princess, and you got to put up with that attitude. So she's awesome, though. There are 2 girls on that troupe that travel together out of 140 people. Only two people on that group voted for Trump. She's one of them. And so they're a blessing, and she just lives on the road. My 21-year-old daughter, she's at a school in the South, major university. And then my son, he graduated 2 weeks ago. He graduated high school valedictorian. These were all homeschool kids, but he graduated high school valedictorian because he was so smart. We had to put him in a school. But he graduated the week prior to that with a degree in mechanical engineering from Auburn. So he graduated from college before he graduated high school. And then he gave a valedictory address to a group of students who didn't know who he was because he'd never been there. But he had to be enrolled in order to do the program. They wanted him at MIT when he was 15 years old. He doesn't look anything like me. He looks like my old postman Ping. I don't know this kid. I was like, who is it? Where do you come from? But that's my retirement plan, and Ping's not getting a dime of that money.
What's he gonna? Does he have any aspirations? What's he gonna do?
So he's done so much because he's been ranked in the top 10 in mathematics since he was 12 years old nationwide. He just flew to Orlando yesterday to do the beta competition again because he won the state of Alabama. And so he goes down there. He loves those competitions. And he's done so much. He's got so many credits. He's technically already a junior again at Auburn. He said, I think I'm going to take a year off. I said, I think you should. you're going to be in an academic setting for the rest of your life.
Right, yeah.
And I think he'll probably wind up going up to MIT. I wouldn't let him go that young. I said, you're not going to be exposed to that kind of woke nonsense that young.
They'll target him and go after him.
Yeah. People say, you got such good kids. What'd you do? I said, I taught them a value system and I beat their ass. Yeah. Like that's, and the beauty of having a big family is you don't have to beat all of them. You can just cut one out of the herd and beat that one while the others watch.
Yeah.
but you got to make it effective, you know?
That's
but
awesome,
they're good
man.
kids, brother.
Yeah, that's really awesome.
It's a blessing.
So, tell us, I got several topics I want to get in, but before we shift to it, I want to know about the run for governor. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when you told me you were going to do it, and you know, it was kind of put me in I had two really good friends, you and Alan West, running at the same time, and I was trying to support both of you guys. And
well, you called me. You called me.
Yeah.
And you said, listen, Alan asked, and because of the nature of the relationship, and I said, I have no problem with that. I think you should endorse Alan.
Yeah.
Because we ran a gentleman's race. Alan's a friend.
Right.
Don Huffines is a friend. We ran a gentleman's race in that primary. We did. We were really trying to do something significant here in the state of Texas. You know, I didn't have a shot at anything. We were up against the black hole of cash and, you know, basically a despot in Texas and Greg Abbott, who's basically set himself up as a king. I didn't want to do it. It was July 2nd, 2020, and we were in the middle of COVID. Abbott did more mask mandates, and I was up there with the Trumps because they were going to do, and Christy Noem, because they were going to do this, the 4th of July at Mount Rushmore for the first time in like 17 years. So we're at dinner, Donald Trump Jr. sitting across the table, Kimberly Guilfoyle, and my phone goes off, and my longtime girlfriend, CJ, she was sitting there with me, and we find out that there's more mandates coming out in Texas. And I always joke, I said, I don't know if it was because I was with a Trump or I was drinking wine, but I got on Twitter and I said, I'm going to run for governor. And the next day it was just a storm of support that was good. And it was hard. I say this tongue in cheek because I know who I'm talking to and I know who your community is, but I always joke, I say, I sort of have PTSD from it.
Yeah.
Like 19 months of campaigning across the state with virtually no money.
When I realized in the middle of that, I realized that you were actually serious. Like you weren't doing it as a disruptor. Yeah, you weren't doing it. I thought you were doing it seriously, but I thought maybe you were doing it as a disruptor. And then when I went down and went up in Dallas and sat with you, I'm like, he's serious. He's gonna.
No, we did, and we've got a lot of people who still encourage me to do more. You know, Steve Toth, the state rep here, I think he's about to announce, I'm going to out him. I think he's about to announce that he's going to run against Crenshaw in the primary.
Congress, yeah.
And he asked me, I saw him at a birthday party February 28th. He looked at me, he goes, are you going to do it? And I go, no, you're going to do it. And he goes, I think you should do it. And I said, Steve, just do it. Mm-hmm. You're going to do it. And, you know, I think Christian Collins may run for Steve's seat there in the House, State House.
Yeah.
I don't know. And so my thing is, I'm like, people are asking me, are you going to run? Are you going to run for anything? I was like, if God tells me to, I will. But right now, I think it's a support role to take the platform and say, okay, these are the people. Yeah, you ever get in trouble for endorsing somebody? Like you endorse somebody and they're like, why'd you do that? Don't you know this about that person? I'm like, well, I don't know everything. So I've gotten real cautious about throwing support behind just anybody.
Yeah.
Because it's crazy.
But
game,
I mean,
man.
I think the way you can stay clear of that, for me, at least I have, and I really learned this with being a surrogate in the Trump campaign, is like, I'm going to pick there's 5 things I care about in this race. And these are the things that are most important to me. Right. Now, you know, and whichever candidate aligns with those things, that's what I'm supporting. And I don't care about all the rest of the stuff. You can throw dirt at anybody, but that's kind of how I've treated it. But I mean, politics, I've gotten asked to run in a number of different things. And I mean, for me, like, I don't want to, I don't have that ambition or desire. I just feel like I'm more impactful outside of that circle. Like, I have more influence outside of that circle. And I believe right now you probably do too. I mean, I'm not saying that's.
Yeah. I didn't like the process at all. Yeah. I didn't like any of it. Texas is a big state. If you're going to run for statewide politics, go to Rhode Island, go to Connecticut. Yeah. 254 states here in this place. And, you know, 1,221 miles of border with Mexico. It's a big state. It's a big spot. And yeah, you know, I talk more than a man probably should because I'm doing multiple podcasts every day. You know, I co-host Dear America with Graham Allen in the morning, Monday through Friday, and then my show's in the afternoon. And then sometimes Dinesh D'Souza will ask me to guest host for him and other podcasts that we're doing. And I'm just like, I think you do have that platform to be able to influence people. And I'm a jackleg. Like what you said, I laughed. I chuckled because it's so true. I'm not a policy expert. I'm not a political expert. I'm not any of those things. I do see myself somewhat as a culture person.
I think, for sure. But I mean, I kind of laughed at saying that when I was saying that too, because I do believe that you probably understand policy more than people in those
There
seats.
may be an element of truth to that just because I'm exposed to so much of it and I do care. And a lot of those people, they're in it, but they don't care about it. But, what was it Breitbart said? Andrew Breitbart, he said that politics runs downstream from culture. Right. Mm-hmm. So I think culture is the overarching umbrella. Is how can we influence culture? How can we shape minds? We've lost that. My biggest mission is to encourage men, I think, first and foremost, but specifically to get us back to not just common sense, but critical thinking, which is lost. And I'm concerned about where we are as a state here in Texas. There's a huge misconception across the country to think that Texas has it all under control and we're some big conservative bastion and bulwark and strength. We're not. We're bad. I mean, all you got to do is look at this latest legislative session we had in Austin. It was nuts.
That's what I heard of. It was just all out war, and that's
playing politics. Yeah. And I mean, we now have a Pakistan Day here in Texas. Yay, us. I mean, we got epic cities that are trying to pop up with the Muslim communities where basically they're going to institute Sharia law within the confines of a community that are there. We've already talked about the open border situation. Our Board of Regents that oversees our colleges and universities are all appointed by Greg Abbott, and they're all progressive liberals, which is insane. We've got the sixth highest property taxes in the nation, unless you get in the metropolitan areas. Then we're number one. And we've got the blueberries in the chili with Dallas and El Paso and San Antonio and Houston and Austin and sometimes arguably Fort Worth, where they are completely blue. The only thing that saves Texas, in my opinion, is the big little cities.
Why is Texas so important? One, on a national stage, but on a global stage. I mean, Alan West, speaking to him, he wrote a book, Hold Texas, Hold the Nation. And
100%.
The message behind that book was so good. Like, if you lose Texas, you lose the nation. If you lose the nation, you lose freedom across the whole world.
Alan's got a great metaphor where he says if you were to hold up a puzzle and each puzzle piece was the shape of a state, and you hung that on the wall and it was all in balance, that you pull Texas out, the whole thing crumbles.
Yeah.
And the numbers back that up. We're arguably the 9th, 8th biggest economy in the world, second in the country. And then you've got, I think, my numbers may slip here a little bit, but I think we supply about 39% of gas and oil and natural gas. I think we're supplying about 28% to the rest of the country. We're an important state. We're an important place. And if you take Texas out, and you've got a huge influx of Californians who are coming in here, not because they want to leave their politics behind. We do have that. We have a lot of progressives coming from California, coming over here and getting in our little towns and running for school board. And they're winning. They're getting in there because they want to change the minds. Now you got pornography in the libraries. You got drag queen story hour. You got all of this nonsense that's going on. We've now, according to this latest legislative session, we now honor Ramadan. Here in the state of Texas. Who are we anymore? So we're losing that sense of identity. We're losing that sense of value and foundation. And I agree with Alan. So goes Texas, so goes the nation. And it's problematic.
Well, it's been targeted, right? But not only
very much so
politically, but probably spiritually, and not probably spiritually for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, on the kind of political landscape, on an electoral map, like if you flip Texas, there's no getting.
So there's a thing that came out. There was a study that came out a couple of weeks ago that says that based on the population growth and what's happening in California and Texas, we're actually about to gain more electoral votes. California may lose some, but as good as that sounds, if we don't keep the culture and the values conservative, we've got a problem. So when you're moving Silicon Valley here, which they are,
right?
Those executives, employees, and all those people are coming to Texas from California. They're not changing their values or their political beliefs.
Right.
And yet we've got a voter base here that doesn't even understand how the primaries work, and only 9% show up for them, and even less for that if it's a runoff. So we've got an issue in the state of Texas, and it's a magnifying glass for the rest of the country, and it's a concern. And I will say something to that point you made. This is a spiritual battle. So I was in the Oval Office a couple of months ago with President Trump, J.D. Vance. We were up there to meet with J.D. Vance and some others, and we met with most of the cabinet. There was a handful of us, and Trump comes in. I've been around Trump numerous times. He's got an amazing mind for remembering who you are.
Yeah.
He'll come up, shake your hand, call you by name. It's incredible. And we go in the Oval Office, and we meet. He's for like 30 minutes. He just gets off the phone with NATO to talk to us, hang out. And Trump's being Trump. And you go to those places of power, and that's what they are, and you leave there, and you're like, man, I'm under a spiritual attack. Why am I under a spiritual attack? Because we take for granted when you get close to those centers of power and those people of power in those places, there's darkness, man.
Yeah.
And it's here in Texas. It's a spiritual battle. We're literally trying to use you can't legislate morality, but there's a lot of moral issues that are happening in the political realm, and they're spiritual battles. I mean, we're fighting for a generation. We're fighting for our children. They're trying to lop genitals off of kids, give them puberty blockers, hormone blockers. And in many ways, we're losing the battle.
Yeah.
You mentioned those pastors that got to stand up against that. We've all got to speak that, you know. And I know a lot of people, our mutual friend, Sarah Gonzalez, you know, Sarah's great about going in and exposing the real agenda behind a lot of the trans and the gay stuff. A lot of the stuff people see on the news is because she went in disguise and filmed that stuff.
Most people believe this, but why are people so intimidated to speak up?
I think it is a spiritual principle. Mm-hmm. I think there's an attack there that wants to silence you. I think there's a lot of things that hit people, and then I think we have what I use as the term toxic empathy. Mm-hmm. That is, we want to be overly compassionate, but we do it to the exclusion of truth. And so it's like, how many times you say, well, I don't care if you're gay. I don't care what you do. Well, here's the thing. We see like being in, quote, Pride Month in June. There's gay and then there's gay.
Yeah.
There's the alphabet mafia that's out there. There's really, and as a Bible believer, I'm like, well, sexual immorality is sexual immorality. I don't care if you're gay, straight, or what. But all of those things, you got to issue. And we don't want to call those things out because we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. Or we don't want to seem like we're intolerant.
Right.
And somewhere along the line, I think we got afraid of the labels. You know, you're going to be called a racist, a transphobe, a homophobe, a xenophobe. Yeah. You're a misogynist, you're a bigot. And you're like, I don't want to be labeled. I mean, do you ever get called out? How many times do you get people who just come at you? You're big time, though, because you don't even read stuff, man. You don't even see stuff. There for a while, you even had an automated thing that came back to me. I sent you a message on Instagram. I was like, who is this guy? We all have done that, right, from time to time. But I was like,
enough people complained about it. We had to take it off.
I know. You know,
now we just don't answer. We just don't answer.
Just don't answer. But, you know, I get people who come at me, everything from death threats to they want to debate or they want to fight or I'm going to expose you. And I had one of these messages that came in today. I'll expose you for what?
Yeah.
I told Glenn Beck, I said, listen, I've never been with a man. I've never kissed a woman that didn't want it. And I've never touched a kid. So I don't have skeletons in the closet. We burned the closet a long time ago. We put the skeletons out in the front yard like a Halloween decoration. And so I know my past. You got a past. We talk about the past. We literally take glory in the fact that God redeemed us from the crap we did.
Just read it in a book.
Yeah.
Put it out there before anybody else did.
Right. Yeah. It's true. I got a book coming out. I'm self-doing a book called Born for Meaning.
What's your second one?
Well, the first one was Am I Crazy? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
That was the. I was
like, I just read the cover and I knew.
You got it. And really, that book, Am I Crazy? It was basically a compilation of a lot of my kind of rumblings and rantings in the truck over the years. But the only part that I encourage people to read is the introduction, because that's where it's some heartfelt stuff that's there.
It was good. It's been a couple of years.
Yeah, this book is I've written this book in tears because this is one that I've basically been letting the Lord counsel me on my way of being.
What's the title?
And it's Born for Meaning. Born for Meaning is kind of recovering from the ashes of, because the last couple of years have been pretty hard on me in a number of ways. I'm pretty open about, you and I've talked about it, obviously with your work with Mighty Oaks, and I've dealt with depression over my life, anxiety and depression, and it's been a battle most of my life, and that demon is real. And all of those things that, that come at people, and mine's not circumstantial. I'm blessed, man. If I was any better, I'd have to sit on my hands to keep from clapping. Dude, I'm excited about life. But
you get to travel around with Party Foul Steve over here?
I got Party Foul Steve's on the road with me. You can follow him on social media at Venmo. At Party Foul Steve. That's simple. He loves $5 a day. It helps me too. But we have a good time. Like, if it's not fun, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
If it's not fun, I don't want to do it. But you get the chemical depression or things like that. And you've seen every facet of that demonic thing that happens. And so the last couple of years, I went through some things of just really wrestling with God, wrestling with the enemy, and just some stuff just going on in life. A lot of it was self-sabotage. A lot of it, you get to a point where you're like, maybe it would be easier just to shoot myself than to keep fighting this. Because if this is what life is like, it ain't fun anymore. And, I had to deal with those kind of things. I had to seek out some counsel and stuff like that. So this book, I just said, I'm going to be as vulnerable as I know how to be and tell some people some truth and see if we can really target men. But, you know how that goes. Men don't read.
That truth that you think is you're being vulnerable about and exposing is actually ends up being a connective tissue because everybody's dealing with the same.
Everybody's dealing with it.
Same stuff. Yeah.
And, I'm in the Western world, or I've come out of it. I mean, I don't even have calluses anymore, man. I used to do cowboy stuff. I don't really do much anymore, but, cowboys are the world's worst. They don't want to admit it. And we've been told the bravado, be strong, put on a tough face. I've cried more in the last 24 months than I did when I was a child. I just, and good tears. I'm not ashamed of them. I'll get on my podcast and I'll start reading the scripture and man, I'll just break and weep. And I'm like, and people are like, dude, get it together. But it's blessed a lot of people because I'm trying to give you permission to just be broken.
To feel.
Yeah.
People don't feel anymore. People are numb. I go through seasons like that where I'm just like emotionally numb.
Yeah.
And, but when I'm still, which is hard for me to be still, and that stillness allows me to have, opportunities to be in the presence of God. That's when I feel that emotional, numbness go away and that shell come off and I'm able to actually reconnect with, things God really burdens my heart for. And ultimately, the things I believe he's created me for and do the work I do in the way that he wants me to do it.
I found myself over the last 2 years, maybe 3 years, 2.5 especially, and I travel. I'm somewhere in the country every weekend, I'm always in front of audiences, but I found myself alone. Like I used to go into the Blaze. I used to go into the studio. I saw there was a camaraderie, the family of the people being there. There was a sense of community. Now I had a studio in my house and I was, taping during the day and I was alone. And I found myself just alone. And it was good and bad because I don't like to be alone. I'm a happy extrovert. Like I like being around people. Mm-hmm. And it forced me to kind of start looking at some things that were going on in my own life, sin, temptation. One of the things that I know this is definitely not the route this show typically takes, but I will say this is something that was impressed on me last week, is I felt like I got a conviction. I said, the first commandment is you'll have no other gods before you. And I said, we never talk about idolatry. Mm-hmm. We talk about sex, we talk about lust, we talk about covetousness and envy and jealousy and bitterness and resentment and unforgiveness. We never talk about idolatry, the things that you put in front of God. And I had to deal with that.
Oh yeah.
I had to start saying, okay, what is it that I have to check with before I say yes to God? And that's idolatry. And I've been really heavy, just kind of internally just looking at that and talking to some people and saying, hey, show me some things that are there. And God's brought some great counselors, man. He's brought some great people. You're a constant source of encouragement. We don't get to spend that much time together anymore, but I see your stuff and I listen to you and all this stuff. And there's some great folks out there that are truly warriors in every way.
I'm right here. We're miles away.
We're literally neighbors.
Yeah.
Literally neighbors. I'm going to your house this afternoon.
Yeah. I got a fire pit. We had the lake.
I know.
I got the boat club. Freedom Boat Club takes care of me, and it's right there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we can go out and cruise in the boat.
I'm gonna have to get Freedom Boat Club.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to get with those guys because I ain't owning another
They're awesome,
boat.
man. I go out, man. I actually writing the books like to get away, like just go out, drop an anchor in the middle of the lake.
Yeah.
Turn my phone off, and write.
Yeah.
No one could unless somebody walk on water like Jesus. They always get to your boat.
Yeah, that's the truth. That's the truth. They can't get to you from there.
Yeah, just say go sit
I don't know.
there.
One of these Force Recon Marines might swim up to you,
come
something
up
like that. The guys in your world, they might can't get to you.
Yeah. Speaking of war, Force Recon Marines, we just and I know I said in the beginning we were talking about this. We just bombed Iran.
Yeah.
And this could be a week delayed, like I mentioned in the beginning. But we did bomb Iran just a few days ago. Absolutely incredible. Let's take the topic of why and all that stuff out. But these guys, there's only I think 20 B-2 stealth bombers.
Yeah.
That we have. We put 14 of them out. We sent 7 of them one direction, overtly to be a decoy, and the other 7 flew. The longest. I think right now it's saying this the longest aerial flight or second longest flight, refueled with no communication, 125 aircraft total, but 7 of them were stealth bombers.
That's insane.
Armed with each of them were armed with 2 MOBs, which are like 30,000 pounds.
Yeah.
Those things could drill down. When I say drill down, they could penetrate about 300 feet of reinforced concrete before they explode.
It's insane.
Before they explode. That's insane. But they did it with no press leaks. The Pentagon, Jennifer Griffith said, never seen in their 18 years at the Pentagon, 0 press leaks.
Yeah,
no one knew
she's
what
not
happened.
a fan of this Pentagon either.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, Iran didn't even launch aircraft. They didn't fire a shot. They didn't launch aircraft. And I think what people like that mission, those MOBs were designed for that site.
For that.
We designed those bombs for that site. They've been mock facilities and trained for that mission for over 15 years.
No, you regardless of how you feel about Israel or whatever, everybody wants to debate all that stuff. You got to tip your hat to that mission. I mean, the way it was carried out. I mean, the superiority of American not only know-how, but just the men and women that put on a uniform every day with a willingness to do those things and the capability of doing it.
Yeah,
unreal.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the most incredible military feats. And
most people have no clue. They just think, we went and dropped bombs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, and I want to get into the authorities and why, but we did not hit a political facility, a government facility, a military facility with Iranian troops. We didn't hit civilians. It was strategically targeted for those nuclear facilities, a direct threat, and they did it precisely.
The way they did it. I'm catching a lot of flack for saying, listen, I believe that I do believe in being America first. I lean a lot of times towards being America only sometimes.
Yeah.
But I don't believe you can be those things and have an isolationist mindset. We are still a global community, right? And regardless of what you think about Netanyahu or whoever, that debate will go on and on and on. But, just lobbing bombs over there wasn't the way we did this. No. It was a precision. I mean, it was strategic and scientific.
Well, I think in your point, I personally don't think that Trump did this for Israel. I don't think he's influenced by Bibi.
I don't think so either.
I don't think he does. He's definitely not Bibi's puppet. I mean, are there people in Washington D.C. that are Netanyahu's puppet? Of course there is. But I don't think that's Trump. Trump's his own man, and I think he looked at this as a threat to not Israel, but a threat to America, which he should. I mean, they've been. I mean, I have friends. I'll name one: Sergeant Major Robert Cotto, killed by General Soleimani IED. They've been trying to kill us for a very long time. They've attacked our bases. Yeah. They threatened death to America. They called America Israel the little Satan, America the great Satan, and said not only is it like I forget how I said it, but basically that they were going to wipe us off the planet. So you cannot allow, as the commander in chief, them to develop a nuclear weapon. You can't.
You're at half a century of the Ayatollah. You're at half a century of them, being a state-sponsored funder of terror, around the world. There's no telling how many sleeper cells we have here. Thank you to the Biden.
With 4 years open border, they're all over there. Yeah,
it's so. You go all the way back to the hostage crisis of 79 and 80 under Jimmy Carter and of course the release under Reagan. They've been coming after us for a long time. Yeah. They're not going to show that kind of mercy. If they had the opportunity, they wouldn't. And so when they have a report that says, okay, we're within days of having, 60% plutonium enrichment, and we're within days of being able to have a bomb and the capability of delivering it at least to Tel Aviv, something's got to happen here. And people tend to forget just the global chaos and crisis. If they dropped a nuclear bomb on Tel Aviv, if that happens in Israel, You think your gas prices are high now. That oil's going to $300 a barrel. And it's going to be a global nightmare with escalated tensions.
And look, you could, like Netanyahu or not, like, if you have the ability to save millions of lives from a nuclear bomb, then you have, as America, I believe you have an obligation to, and you can be America first and still do that. I think the problem with most Americans is, and mainly because of the news cycle, is they figure you have to have a good guy, bad guy. You have to have an A or B option. They don't. I think most Americans can't. It's just too complex to fit in a gray area. And geopolitics, there's no black and white. I mean, you could stand with Israel and still not trust the Israeli government.
Right.
Like,
I don't trust our own government.
I don't trust our own government. Why would I trust the Israeli government, right? And they have a history of not being trustable, our government and the Israeli government. But you can still stand with them in the fact that we don't want the world's largest sponsor of terrorism and someone that's actually yelled death to America and death to Israel to have a nuclear weapon. I don't understand how you can't stand together on that.
And when you start comparing, and I say this tongue-in-cheek and funny, but it makes a point. I'm not worried about sleeper cells of Jewish economists or or Hollywood executives. I'm not worried about those sleeper cells. Those aren't the guys that are coming in there and screaming, Allah Akbar and blowing themselves up.
Or about Hezbollah knocking out our grid.
Yeah,
and sending us back in the Stone Age, which they can, by the way.
Yeah, and I mean, do we have some issues with Israel? Yeah, 100%. We can beat that horse all day long.
Yeah,
I have a lot of issues with that. I have a lot of issues with the bad theology surrounding it. In fact, I did a podcast episode about it today. It's not going to make people happy to say it.
Yeah.
But
and they did murder Jesus, by the way.
They did murder Jesus. They do have writings that say
there's that. I know that's probably not popular. We get some comments. This would be good some comments.
Well, I mean, they did that, and some of their writings actually say that he's boiling in a vat of piss to this day.
Yeah.
Again, they're not Christian. I said at lunch to Party Foul Steve, I said, you have these people who they want to bash the church. The church is full of hypocrites, does all this kind of stuff, but I don't go to church anymore. I believe in Jesus, but I don't go to church because church. So here you got the bride of Christ, the one that's being sanctified to spend eternity with Jesus, your Lord, and you're going to talk bad about them. But if you ever say, man, Israel's doing something wrong, you're like, you better bless Israel.
Yeah.
I mean, we just saw Ted Cruz the other day. Well, I learned in Sunday school, you bless Israel, so you'll be blessed. I got a big debate about that type of emphasis when we elevate race over grace or real estate over what he says you've come to Mount Zion, which is a spiritual Jerusalem. Yeah. And we've kind of mistaken that. Galatians 3 says that the children of Abraham, the seed of Abraham, are the children of faith. That's in this day. So when God made a physical promise to a physical man about his physical descendants, he was also making a spiritual promise to his spiritual seed and his spiritual descendants, which ultimately is the church. That's a theological debate. But at the end of the day, you take that stuff and set it aside, because I do believe Jesus is on the throne. He's not subject to the assassin's bullet or the voter's ballot. You can't impeach him. You can't invoke the 25th Amendment. You can't get him off the throne. He's there. Yep. He's in control. We operate under the providential hand of God, and our times are in his hands. I believe that wholeheartedly, or I wouldn't do anything that I do. I wouldn't leave the house. but at the end of the day, you set that stuff over here and just have that discussion where you say, what was potentially about to happen in the Middle East was obviously about to be extremely tragic. Now, people are going to make is this George W. Bush's weapons of mass destruction? Well, we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
But we can tip our hat to, I believe, a guy that's in the office now who isn't beholden to anybody, and he's not a puppet like Joe Biden was.
This is not a military-industrial complex war profiteering.
No, and we didn't declare war, contrary to what AOC wants to say.
No.
You want to talk about warmongering? I mean, Barack Obama was dropping 26,000.
Just in 2016 alone, he dropped 26,171 bombs.
7 different nations.
In 1 year.
Yes.
Yeah, and no one said he went to war. I mean, he had the authority to do that. It's just strategic strikes to protect our national security. Yeah. Love him or hate him, that's what he did, and I don't know his motivation behind it. But and Trump did for 4 years too. I mean, Trump dropped bombs all over the world. I mean, no one said nothing then, but because Israel's involved, right? And people, there's this movement against Israel.
There is.
But I mean, look.
There are allies in the Middle East.
There are allies in the Middle East. And I wouldn't want them, if they were threatening Turkey, and they were going to drop, threatening to drop a bomb on Istanbul. Like, we need to step in. You can't drop a nuclear weapon on another country and we not do something about it. We have the capability. We're the only nation in the world that had the capability to do it. We just did.
Yeah.
We're the only one person that could do that. And I don't think it's a George Bush weapons of mass destruction. There's enough intelligence out there to know that that nuclear facility, Russia's admitted it, Iran's admitted it. I mean, Saddam Hussein wasn't boasting about having it, but Iran's boasting about having it.
They're boasting about having it. And China, who needs their Belt and Road Initiative secured, and that piece of property right there where Iran is important to their future and their prosperity. So you never know what kind of toys they can throw over there to them.
Did you see, speaking of that piece of property, did you see that photo on somebody put permanently closed on the, they geotagged it, put a location, but permanently
you got to admit, some of the memes that come out of this stuff are pretty funny, dude. But then again, as you said, they're throwing bombs. You know, a couple hours ago before we started, they were throwing bombs over missiles over Qatari airspace, because that's our biggest Air Force base is in Qatar, and it's already evacuated, I think, but. It was a lame duck attempt. It was basically for them to save face within the nation of Iran. They said they destroyed the bases.
Right. They put a state-sponsored radio.
State radio. Yeah. And so state media. And so that's what they did. I won't put my leg up like that. I'll block your camera. But I said, and plus it looks like a girl. But I said, they got to do that. Their little, save face kind of thing.
I think Trump said, we're not.
He already said we're not going to retaliate.
Yeah.
And
I think I was saying earlier, it's like if you punch somebody and knock them out and they get up staggering and they push you, you're like,
well,
let that one slide.
People get so mad at me because they think you know what you're saying about all this stuff. And, but it would seem to me, if this is the case, that this is their way to save face and bow out and disinvite themselves from the skirmish, I would say that Trump's plan worked.
It did. Look, so one, as commander-in-chief, to clear that, did Trump have the authority? Absolutely. As commander-in-chief, he has the authority to do strategic strikes. He also has the War Resolution Act of 1973. That's right. And he would only have to notify Congress 48 hours later, which he did, by the way, on Twitter. And he said, "Thank you for your attention in this matter."
And he called Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, and Jeffries didn't answer the phone. No. Chuck did. So he notified both the Senate and the Congress. Yeah, on the opposite side, so he did do that.
Yeah, he has some good lawyers, by the way, around him. He knows what he's doing. So he was totally legal in the clear to do what he did. Had the full authority to do it. And the why would be because it was an immediate threat to national security, to our troops, and to human life, whether American life or not. And I believe he was right.
Well,
to
your
act.
point, as you said a second ago, we're the only ones who could have pulled that off. Israel, as sophisticated and as dangerous as they are, they couldn't have pulled that off. You would have been a lot more casualties. And I think they've been okay with that. Yeah. They're okay with the casualties. They're fine with wiping Iran off the face of the earth. Yeah. Trump even came out the other day and said, we know where Khomeini is, but we're letting him live for now. And I think it's basically saying he's 86 years old. Let's let him watch his kingdom crumble before he dies. Yeah. Which I'm okay with that too.
Yeah. Look, people could say what they want about President Trump. I don't even think President Trump is a Republican. I think he's a libertarian, probably at best. He's anti-war. He has always been anti-war. Yeah. He's the only president in I think our lifetime, maybe at least 20 years, that hadn't started a new war, only deconflicted wars. And this isn't a provocation of war. I mean, could war start from this? Of course it could. Sure. But I think it's very thought out, very strategic. I personally believe that he probably somehow alluded to Putin and President Xi that
I would think so.
Yeah, that hey, something's about to happen. Yeah. This is not about you. But I do not think that either one of them will step into this.
I really don't think so either.
Yeah.
I mean, Russia, they're stretched pretty thin as it is after this prolonged deal in Ukraine. Yeah. And Russia, in a lot of ways, is a third world country anyway. They've spent everything they got on their military deal. Yeah. And if you've ever been to Moscow, I remember my first time in '94, I was like, this is a third world country. Like they spent all their money. Yeah. I'm taking the train out to Zelenozdorozhnia, and I'm like, this place looks bombed already.
Well, I've been in the Russian occupied territory of Ukraine and seen hundreds of Russian bodies, and the equipment they have on them is like 1960s equipment. I mean, it's paper tiger. I think everybody knows it. Do they have a nuclear arsenal? Yes, but
Sure.
Putin's evil, but he's not stupid.
He's not stupid.
And even President Z came in and he's still asking for things to de-escalate. So they're not. I don't think it's provoked war. And if it provoked war with anyone, it's Iran. But we've obviously taken out their capability to do anything. So I think the implications really come down to U.S. domestic terror because of the open borders, and even more than like malls or large events. I think our risk is going to be our critical infrastructure, and we definitely have, from what I understand, we definitely have sleeper cells here, and our critical infrastructure is vulnerable. I've just put up. It's probably going out. It'll probably already be out when this comes out. Yeah, it will. But talk to Tommy Waller. He's a friend of mine, president of the Center for Security Policy, which I'm on the board of, and talking about critical infrastructure. We have to strengthen our critical infrastructure.
Now, people have no idea how fragile our grid is anyway.
Yeah, we have three, essentially three grids total, two major grids.
Yeah.
And, like you're talking about, people think this sounds extreme, but it's true. If the grid goes down in the United States, it would take us longer than a year to put it back up. And in that year, it would you could lose 90% of the population.
Well, it takes about 72 hours before the bad guys realize the good guys aren't coming, and you can't call on them. So if you're not ready, and you're not ready, I mean, Earl and Phyllis that live down the street from you, they're not going to be taking out any jihadis, So it's at the end of the day, it's on you to defend your deal, and they're going to overwhelm you. So it's a bad deal, and you don't have the ability to call for help. Yeah. That's why I'm moving in with you. That's why I'm coming over to your house.
Smith and Wesson and Vortex, my house has plenty of arsenal. I got plenty of ammo.
Yeah. Somebody asked me recently. They said, "Do you need some 9mm?" I was like, "No, I got it."
Yeah.
If I go through the amount of 9mm ammunition that I have,
I got this dude. He's a former police officer from High Desert Cartridges, and he hooks me up with ammo, man. And he sends me boxes of ammo. He's such a great guy, and the ammo is really good. Yeah. And I got plenty of ammo. Plenty of guns, but more than that, man. People need to prepare, and this could sound like a plug, and it is because I want people to be ready. Uncharted Supply Company, my friend Christian over there, he's they have supplies that people have to. I mean, if anything, go on their website. There's so many supplies that you have to have. There's a 72-hour bag that. I have one in my car, I have one in my wife's car, I have one in my house. You grab the 72-hour bag and literally each of those bags, two people could survive in 72 hours. And then you get to, you have to have something set up beyond that. But I have that everywhere I go. It's in my car right now.
Yeah. So what is the Special Forces community? I mean, you got your finger on the pulse of that. You've shared some things with me over the years of just, and I know a lot of guys that are, former Special Forces, and I don't know if you guys can even say former. You guys are always itching for a fight anyway. I mean, what's the sentiment there? I mean, are those guys saying, all right, if it's going to pop off in this country, let's pop it off. Let's go, Is that, I mean, is the ability of physical combat on our soil in a situation like that
Yeah, I mean, look,
what's the capability of that, or what's the possibility of that?
I mean, I don't see any country in the world having the ability to infiltrate the United States in military force on U.S. soil.
I just think in terms of the ones that are already here.
But the ones that are here, I think the preparation is going to be on the individual level. I don't think there's no collaboration of militias of former U.S. Special Forces guys that are geared up to go fight jihadists if they come here. It's going to be these swarming attacks where if the trigger's fired off, it's going to be 10 malls at one time, or a couple of concerts at one time, churches, stuff like that. And there's just no way to predict where they are without the intelligence of the intelligence that's going to come from Kash Patel and the FBI's office, and which is critical. It's why it's so important to have FBI that's focused on protecting the American people and not going after being weaponized against their political opponents. And unfortunately, we've been doing that for too long in multiple administrations. And I'm so grateful to see these agencies, these three-letter agencies, and it's not done. We're not near out of the woods, but have some leadership that's getting back in control and back on mission, because the mission is to serve the people and protect the American people, not to be political weapons. And
I know Cash and I know Dan. Bongino, and I trust those guys. I think they're good guys, and I think they're up against a lot. I mean, we got you got 38,000 employees, and half of them hate your guts and are opposed to you. You got to kind of weed through all that stuff.
It's gonna take a while. That's what I said. We're not there right now. So like, to answer your question, like, that's where it comes down to being ready on an individual basis. Yeah. Especially if you're a man, like, you have a responsibility to your family. And then your community around you, to be as prepared as possible. And, if you don't have the ability to harvest fresh water, and know how to harvest fresh water, how to harvest food for your family, how to physically protect yourself and protect those around you, and be equipped to do that, man, you're not doing your due. To me, like, this sound like that bravado masculinity thing, but it's just true. You're not doing your role as a man in this community right now, because it's the threat, and I'm not trying to terrify anybody, but the threat here in America is very real, and there are bad actors that came across that border, for many years, but especially the last 4 years, and they are placed and waiting to be triggered. Now, what's going to trigger them? Will they ever be triggered? We don't know that, but I want to know that if it happens, that I'm ready, and my family is not going to be a soft target. Yeah, my house is not going to be a soft target. If the power grid goes down, I'm not. My wife and kids are not going to die of dysentery because they couldn't get fresh water. They're not going to starve to death. They're not going to not have medicine because I didn't prepare.
I've preached it from the rooftops, dude, for years.
Well, I know you used to have what you used to promote. I think My Patriot Food Supply or something like that.
My Patriot Supply. I mean, we've done all of those things, and I encourage people to.
And by the way, I don't have any relationship with any of those people. Like,
I encourage people, like, we've often done. I think one of our sponsors now is All Family Pharmacy, and promo code Chad 10. But having those medicines on hand that you need, if you're ever in a supply chain issue or there's a battle, I mean, your prescriptions are coming from China anyway, China and India. If suddenly we get a supply chain battle going on, you're not getting your prescriptions. You need to have that stuff on hand. Yep. And these days, now it's a good thing to have ivermectin on hand and methylene blue. And
I have ivermectin, I have penicillin, I have all that stuff like stocked up.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you come to get it from me, like, I have lead too, so don't.
Yeah, exactly. We got different types of pills for that. And so I encourage everybody. I did a episode on my show the other day, and I showed them specific cases where I have, everything down to a label maker, making sure that you're able to classify the stuff that what you got, so you can put your hands on it as quick as you can.
I think the problem is some people think that's like paranoia, or you're kind of weirdo for doing that. I mean, I think I am, but
remember everybody's going to die in Y2K, right? And nothing happened. But I've always been somewhat prepared, even back then, and nothing happened. But 3 weeks, I was living in Northeast Alabama at that time. A massive ice storm hit that shut everything down for 6 weeks in Northeast Alabama. So Y2K didn't happen, but I was ready when the ice storm happened. I mean, a couple of years ago, we had a grid failure here because of, windmills don't work when it gets below 31 degrees, and we weren't prepared. Our, ERCOT grid here in Texas, which is separate from the national grid, went down. People died because of that. Yeah. And if you're ready.
Froze to death in Texas.
They froze to death in Texas, of all places. So, I encourage people, just have some common sense. And this is a dangerous place. Going to concerts, going to shopping malls, it's never really been my thing anyway.
Right.
I'm like, I don't want to be, because we have an overblown sense of false security.
I mean,
we're more worried about our lattes than we are, staying alive.
And I mean, I think people, especially in America, they think that we're immune to crisis, but you turn on the news, man, it happens, and it could happen to you. Yeah. And I'd rather be overly prepared. And people will say I'm paranoid than not be prepared at all. And God forbid one of my loved ones is a consequence of my lack of preparedness. Yeah. And so I
want to be one of your loved ones.
You are, man.
I want to come over.
Yeah. We just got to hang out more.
I know it.
So many people in this country, I believe, are still love this country. I believe are still patriots. Despite the noise of the loud ones that go crazy. But I think America truly is like a nation of patriots. I get to travel around, speak. You do too. But we're tired. Like, people are tired. They're exhausted with the drama, the political division, the headlines in the news. I think at this point, people are just exhausted by it. Is there any encouragement that you have for that? I mean, it's a good turn.
Look through the smoke. There's a lot of stuff. Social media makes it hard to ignore the things. I said back in the 80s, I was a kid, and I said back in the 80s when Ted Turner started CNN, I said, what are they going to talk about when they run out of the news? They're going to start making stories up. And that's exactly what they've done with these 24/7 news agencies. And they're controlling the narrative. And people they're exhausted of trying to figure it out. I mean, a couple of years ago, we all had to be virologists and microbiology experts, and then we had to be experts on Gaza and Palestine and the Houthis and all these different things. And now we got to be experts on uranium and Iran, and everybody's going from the pride flag to the Ukraine flag to Palestinian flag to the Iranian flag.
Now let's see who's going to put up the Iranian flag, right?
These flag people are in business, dude.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, and this is hard for me to do, you got to turn it off.
Yeah, that's just,
you got to turn it off.
Yeah, it is exhausting. Even doing this, right? Even this is like our world, and we're like, I want to go back to the days of, remember when we were kids? Like, man, you and I are the same age, like 1980s.
Yeah,
you didn't hear about all this stuff. Our kids are hijacked by this stuff too now.
They are, and they don't know any other different. Like I used to sit on the toilet and read the shampoo bottle. Yeah. Now I got to scroll through my messages. I used to look at the JCPenney catalog, dude, and sometimes I was on the wrong pages, if you know what I'm talking about, boys. But now we're just, notifications, emails, text threads, and got to do this, keep up with this, got to, and I know your schedule. I got to get on an airplane. I got to go to this city. Yeah. I'm traveling 250,000 miles a year in the air, and I've got to be in front of these people. I got to be. And this desire, or I should say, this need to be relevant all the time.
Yeah,
I sort of lost that. I was like, I'm probably going to be wrong on some things. I've got a foot-shaped mouth. I can put it in there real quick. Yeah. I'm okay. Like there's something liberating to be able to say, I don't know. Like I don't know the answer to that. Somebody came to me the other day at that event in California, and they wanted to talk all this stuff about Texas politics, and I said, I don't know. Like I'm like a goose. I wake up in a new world every day. Yeah. Try to sort it out again.
It's just too much. Yeah,
you can't.
Yeah, that's just too much.
Can't keep up.
Yeah, I just really think people are exhausted. One of the things I think has relieved that a little bit. I mean, it adds to it and it relieves it. Is these podcasts, because you're able to get deeper into topics and share some more information than the headline news. Because the headline news is just like, it's just a barrage, pop, 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 pop. But this allows you to do deep diving.
It's therapeutic for me.
Yeah. Yeah, because you dig in. I guess, what's your perspective on mainstream media in this uptick in independent podcasts like this?
I think it's where it's at. I think, regardless of what anybody thinks about Elon, I was always skeptical of Elon in a lot of ways. I remain that way because he's a transhumanist and wants to put a chip in my head. But I'm very careful about any billionaire that inserts himself in the middle of the conversation constantly. And he certainly did that. But I appreciate the fact that he did kind of bring the public square by buying Twitter and bringing that back to a place where we did have some elements of free speech. More people were getting their news from places like X. And they are getting, I learn a lot from people. I learn a lot just by listening and reading the comments and hearing what people say. And I'm like, okay, that's a perspective I wasn't thinking about. And I think the mainstream media, the legacy media, is truly dead. I mean, MSNBC and CNN, they can't get, my friend Brianna Morello, she just got a message from CNN. Here they are, they're lobbing bombs into Qatar. And they sent her a message that said, we noticed that Elon Musk unfollowed you on X. Would you like to make a comment about that? And she's like, really? That's your news today? Yeah. That's what you're concerned with? So they don't live on the same planet.
Because journalism is dead, right?
It's been dead for a long time because there's no such thing. So I went to the University of Georgia with the goal of going to their broadcast journalism school when I went. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I learned there is something that we just don't have anymore, and that's journalistic objectivity. And when you read a news story or watch a news story, if the person telling the story at the end of it, their opinion on the matter, that's not journalism.
Right, because journalism is investigation. You don't know what you're going to end up. You're just investigating and you're revealing that investigation. In legacy media or mainstream media right now, they already know, they have their point.
They're activists.
Yeah.
They're activists. And now we go in there and watch, what's his name, Scott Jennings on CNN, try to own the left. Everybody's working for a soundbite.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to get a thing. And you've been to the White House. You know how the press pool hangs out there out back, the area they call sticks, because there's always a camera going. Somebody's always talking. And now, they used to put a lid on it at 2 in the afternoon when Joe Biden was in office. I mean, he worked from 11 till 2, if you want to even call that working. I mean, they had to pull his tongue off of a window, whichever one he was licking, get him out of the basement, and trot him out there in front of a microphone where he couldn't even read the damn teleprompter.
Change his diaper, give him ice cream cone, and put him back in front of the camera.
You know, wake him up. He's like, who am I? Give him a shot of something. Let him go. Now Trump, I mean, these people, you see the clips, they're running to the press room. And well, I mean, I've been invited numerous times to the White House now. I was just with Carolyn Levitt a couple of weeks ago up there. They're letting people like you and me go in and ask the questions.
Well, I don't know. I haven't announced this yet. I think we've put it out on a newsletter, but on this show we have Richard McGinnis. Yeah. Richard McGinnis is he led the Daily Caller for Tucker Carlson, and so we just hired him. He's our White House. Oh, cool. He's the Resilient Show White House press correspondent.
That's awesome.
So he's there every day at the White House and in DC interviewing people, and gonna be and so once a week I'll meet up with them on a Zoom, and he'll debrief me for the week, and we're putting that information out.
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough to get, I get that. Somebody said the other day, the White House is sending out talking points to influencers. I hate that phrase. But I get an email every day from the White House that says, okay, this is what we're working on. This is what we're doing. It's not, this is what we need you to report on.
Right.
This is what we need you to tell your audience. This is our agenda. This is what we're doing, and I like that.
They should be doing that.
Yeah, they got us in a lot of trouble.
It's called transparency.
They got a number of us in trouble. We were at the White House a couple of months ago, and they handed us that binder that said it was the Epstein file, and we didn't have a chance to really look at it. And people are taking pictures of it. They trotted us out right in front of the press pool, which I didn't appreciate. Yeah. And they're taking pictures of us, and they try to make it like we were trying to float something out there that we had something that nobody had. Once we looked at it, we realized we didn't have anything that anybody else didn't already have. And then I was on Newsmax 2 or 3 times that evening saying the same thing. Like, they didn't give us anything. Yeah. The damage was done there.
I love the administration. But, I've loved something, I'll call it out. And that's been my big disappointment. A major disappointment with me has been the Epstein list. And I
have been a student of that deal for a long time.
I don't care what's in it. I don't care who's in it. I don't care if it destroys the economy. We'll rebuild it. Burn it down.
If it pulls the thread that unravels the entire fabric of society, I'm willing to start over. Yeah. If that's what it reveals.
Burn it down.
We'll start over with decency.
Yeah. I mean, it has to be. We have to. And by the way, you and I aren't the only one. The American people across the board want it or demanding it, and it's and we deserve it. We deserve to know who's on that list and what happened. Yeah. Who Jeffrey Epstein was.
And you can go back, back when I was at the Blaze, we did a lot of deep dive investigations. I probably know more about Jeffrey Epstein and his life and lifestyle and the things he was doing than the average person that's out there, because we did a lot of investigations on that. Yeah. We scoured through tons of transcripts and manuscripts and things like that. So I don't take any of that stuff lightly. And you're right. If it unravels everything we know,
so be it.
That we've considered a safe space in this country, so be it. Yeah. If it exposes Mossad, the CIA, every congressperson that's up there, even if it's Donald Trump, it needs to be exposed.
Yeah, we need to know. Yeah. What do you think? You think it's going to happen? You think they're going to do it?
No, I don't think it exists. Unfortunately, I don't think it exists. I think there are some things that exist. There might be some videos that are out there, but I think the thing's been destroyed. I think they've ripped it from existence.
And we say they. Who would be the they?
Well, the easy target would say the Biden administration, maybe. Mm-hmm. It disappoints me. Pam Bondi was the attorney general in Florida whenever that trial was going on with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. She, of all people, should know about that. I mean, Ghislaine Maxwell, she's in prison right now. Where are the Johns?
If she's got convicted on 11 counts, and who are the victims? Yeah. Who is she providing these services to?
Yeah. And then, her father was, he died of a heart attack and fell off of his boat. Sure. I mean, we know about those Mossad connections and stuff like that. People say, well, I think they were Mossad. I don't have a problem believing that at all.
Yeah.
I mean, what intelligence agency wouldn't value that type of information if they could control a person in power because we got you?
Yeah.
We got you.
Yeah, I believe.
I don't want to live in that world. Yeah. I don't want that to be true. Mm-hmm. But a critical thinking, because again, my first step of critical thinking, we talked about this earlier. My first rule of thumb with critical thinking, my audience hears it all the time, is you got to ask yourself, how am I wrong? Mm-hmm. How am I wrong? I can think about all this stuff all day long, but there's no such thing as a vacuum in nature, and the media tells you only so much information. The government releases only so much information, and then it's left with an information vacuum. Now we've got questions and thoughts and considerations and all these things. They rush to fill it. That's where our conspiracy theories come from. But we're not stupid people.
No.
By and large, you said most Americans, they love this country. They do know how to think for themselves. You know, we got this guy that killed the senators and their spouses, or shot the senators and their spouses up there in Minnesota, and they don't want to release that guy's manifesto. So now everybody's got to be at each other's throat on social media trying to speculate over what in the world happened. Happened with the Covenant school shooting in Nashville. I want to release the manifesto. Release the damn manifesto.
Yeah.
Let us come to our own conclusions on this thing. But you guys are trying to control the narrative, and you brainwash everybody with stuff like very fine people on both sides, and you take that out of context. Now people have been brainwashed with that soundbite. You've already formed the narrative that's backing an agenda, and then later on they'll reveal it. Well, it's too late because the damage has been done.
Yeah,
and everybody's brainwashed from it.
And you got a population that doesn't trust their government.
I don't.
Right? Because I don't trust them because of those things.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, whose bag of cocaine was it? Who beat up Paul Pelosi in his house?
Yeah.
You know, what happened to monkeypox? They shut us down. You know, over 9,000 protocols connected with the flu that came from China. We weren't allowed to talk about that. We weren't allowed to talk about the horse pace. We were vilified and kicked off of social media for that, demonetized, deplatformed. Then they're going to trot out something because they were losing control. They realized nobody had the flu in 4 years, and they said, well, let's roll out monkeypox. They said, well, what's the protocol for that? It's like, we can't rub your genitals on another human being. We're like, F you. This is America. We put our genitals where we want to. Look at our pride parades. We got so many genitals in this country. We're arguing for our right to cut them off, you know? And so, but all this stuff out there, and it's all backed by big pharma, big government, the bureaucrats. We're ruled not by our elected officials. We're ruled by the 4 million unelected bureaucrats that are up there that God only knows how they got the job, and you can't get them out of there with dynamite. So here we are, everything's been tyrannized, from the media to medicine to you name it, the courts. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And here we are. We're just trying to, at the end of the day, I want to live the best life I can. I want to make as much money as I can. I want to bless my kids. I want to sit there one day and drink a beer sitting on my back porch and look at the sun go down over the water while my grandkids are playing in the front yard. And I'd like to keep as much of that money as possible, too, without the IRS being, doing their Gestapo tactics. But yet we live in a world where Joe Biden hires 87,000 IRS agents, but there's only 7 agents in our country right now that are focused on the human trafficking situation that's going on. That's why Robert Kennedy said a few weeks ago, he said, it was the Department of Homeland Security that's been the enabler of all of this trafficking that's going on in our country.
100%, yeah. He's right.
He's right. So you got 7 agents that are focused on that. 7 agents. In our world, I mean, it was very telling when Tim Tebow pulled out that graph and showed Sean Ryan a couple of weeks ago. It was very telling and how bad these populations centers, these bubbles of trafficking that are going on of our children.
Yeah, when you have 7 agents, you can't deny complicit. You're complicit.
No.
Yeah.
So, no, I don't trust them.
Yeah. Same here.
They don't like me. And I'm like, you know what? Taxation is theft. Everybody knows that. I stay in a fight with these guys because I'm like, I at the end of the year, you know how it is. I get 210.99s at the end of the year because I'm self-employed. I go out and I speak at all these different deals. I'm like trying to keep up with that, pull a CPA's hair out. And I'm at a point where I'm like, screw them. Take me to jail. What are we doing anymore?
Yeah, they're spending it on who knows what anyway, right? Yeah. Elon laid it all out for us.
They're laying out lines for Zelensky to snort or something. I don't know, but it's a crazy world.
Speaking of the censorship, have you seen a relief? You live on your social media platforms like Instagram, Twitter.
It changed.
Or
I don't get the same reach that I used to get. Mm-hmm. I was talking to my friend. I won't call his name, but he's a conservative liaison at Meta.
Okay.
I met him through Don Jr. and Christian Collins, and I had dinner with him, and I said, "There's a position that's a conservative liaison." I said, "Is that like a DEI hire?" And he goes, "No, it's legitimate." Yeah. And I can call it. I'm the only person in Texas, by the way, that sued Facebook back in 2022, February 22, and won. It eventually got overturned, but I'm the only person who's ever sued Facebook in Texas and won. And I sued them because I was running for office and they were censoring me, and they knew they were, and we got that overturned at least until the election was over with. But now at least I can send a text message and get most things handled. But I asked J.D. Vance, sitting at a conference table in the Roosevelt Room just off the Oval Office. I asked him, and then he brought it up to the president about my concerns, because this was one of the issues and it was one of the things they campaigned on. And you got Zuckerberg and all these guys that are sitting there at the inauguration, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe they're going to hit the reset button. So I was talking to my friend there at Meta, and he goes, what can I do for you? And I said, go find that algorithm button and push it that resets everything. He goes, well, I wish that button existed. I said, the button exists. You just don't have the authority to push it. I said, that's what we, and so Trump told me in the Oval Office, he's like, we'll get it fixed. We'll take it. We got these guys. We got them. They're going to take care of it. We're going to do it. It's better, but it's not fixed.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I'll give you a statistic example. I'm a brand ambassador for Smith & Wesson Firearms. They're a great partner for their show. They had over 1 million on Instagram and through Meta, Facebook, over 1 million followers, and they were getting about 5 to 6 million views a month on Meta, which sounds like a lot. That's not a lot for 1 million followers. For Smith & Wesson, right? That's not a lot of views, and their stuff was getting censored. Everything I posted as an ambassador was getting not only censored, but they would shut it down. They would shut down my page. They would make my page not searchable. And so we brought it to a high enough level of exposure to where we got some articles put out. They came in and said, okay, we're gonna look at the account. So look at Smith & Wesson's account, and they said, okay, we've noticed there's some filters on it. We're gonna take those filters off. They took those filters off. It went from 5 to 6 million views a month to 500 to 600 million views a month.
Wow.
Because it took a filter off. How many years did Smith & Wesson as a company suffer because of that? 500 to 600 million views a month.
So when they started locking all that stuff down, they started specifically January 27th of 2017. It was right after Trump took the oath of office is what it was. About a week later, because of all the Cambridge Analytica and all the crap that they were doing in Russian collusion and the Facebook ads and stuff. MyPoliticalCowboy.com blog had 750,000 unique visitors a day. It's pretty good for a redneck like me.
Yeah.
750,000 a day. It immediately overnight went to 3,500 a day. They throttled it. They throttled that. Google
what was the platform?
It was a WordPress deal, but and I can't remember what we were hosting it through. It was a Meta deal because it's all connected. But that was before it was Meta, but it was all a Facebook thing. And our biggest roll of traffic was through Facebook in those days, and they shut it down. Yeah. I got billions of views. I mean, you want to talk about a good time waster, sitting in the truck with a dog in the back seat, just making people laugh for 30 seconds. Billions of views. I got the attention of everybody from the president to Hollywood, you name it, across the board. People knew who I was because of that. I went from getting, I knew as soon as I posted a video, this is going to get 10, 20 million views.
Yeah.
People are going to see this. And it went to, now, if you get 100,000 views on a video,
oh yeah, that's good.
You're doing great.
Yeah.
These days. They totally changed the game. And you're like, oh, well, it just sucks to be you. It does suck because, again, we worked hard to build something. If it was easy, everybody could do it. We built a platform. We built a voice. And then to have somebody throttle you.
Yeah.
Like my YouTube channel, I got 373,000 subscribers on that thing. Yeah. I do well to get 1,500 views on a news short these days. And it's all because of COVID, because I told the truth. Mm-hmm. All the stuff that's now been proven true. Mm-hmm. We talked about that on my show. I didn't back off of it. And are they gonna take that filter off? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
They're scared to death of truth tellers, man. I'll tell you, it's not even truth tellers, question askers. That's what they're scared of.
Asking the question.
They don't want you asking the question. And that's because that's what gets people thinking.
Well, I mean, it's never made sense to me as a company because, they make money off of the ad revenue.
Right.
But they care more about the ideology than they do about the business model of it.
And now, it's eaten up with bots and Nigerian scammers. And, I'm sure there's thousands of Chad Robichaux fake pages that are out there. I had a woman that came to a show. Where were we, Steve? We were in Raleigh, North Carolina. And this lady came to a show. She had just gotten scammed by somebody pretending to me for $103,000. He was praying with her, talking to her, pretending to be me. I needed to borrow $100,000 I've seen it over and over again. I've seen people lose anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000. That was a big one.
Yeah.
pretending to be me.
That's terrible.
It's horrible.
Terrible. And they spend more time throttling your voice than they do against the scammers.
Yeah, some guy in Lagos, Nigeria, who's got bot farming and sending out this crap.
Yeah, when my account gets throttled, and we just went through it last month to because they had shut down my Instagram account last month, and you couldn't search for Chad. You had to put you couldn't even put Chad Robichaux. You had to put the full Instagram handle to get it, but all of the bots were listed. So you could see all the bots that had Chad Robichaux as my name and my picture and stuff like that, all the fake accounts, but you couldn't see.
I get people who message me every day, people who should know better. I mean, friends will send me a text message with a screenshot and they'll be like, "Is this you?" I'm like, "It has 2 followers."
Yeah.
No, it's not. Don't talk to them. Delete it, report it, whatever. I mean, you can report it if you want. There's going to be 10,000 that pop up behind it. So, they don't throttle, they don't crack down on any of that stuff.
This show, it's called The Resilient Show, and we talk about, the being resilient through, mental toughness, being physically fit, or having good physical health, socially being around the right people, and having a strong spiritual foundation. And one of the things I just like asking every guest is, as the listeners are tuning in, what message would you have for them and their individual resiliency moving forward?
I was actually reading this morning 1 Peter 2:9, where he says you're a chosen generation, a holy nation, a royal priesthood, his own special people, called out of darkness to proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. And I was thinking about that, and because you think about Israel, and then you think about the church, and you think about that God called you to be this unique person. And I consider back whenever they had the temple and the tabernacle and the Levites, who were the priesthood. That was the tribe that was the priest, and they would play music before God, and they kind of led the worship and the sacrifices and all that. And there's interesting thing: those Levites wanted when you were born, you were going to play an instrument. You had to create the instrument. You had to build it. King David even talks about having this sound that wasn't being produced in the earth, so he built an instrument, as a psalmist. And I read that and I go, if I'm his own peculiar person called to make a noise in the earth, called out of darkness into his light, then I always tell people, I say, you as an individual, God looked in the earth and said, there's an instrument that I need, it doesn't exist, to make a sound in the earth. Nobody else is making that sound. So I'm going to create a Chad Robichaux. He's going to make a unique sound that nobody else in this world can make. 8 billion people on the planet, you're the only one that can make that sound. There's something hugely purposeful in staying the course and being comfortable in your own skin, discovering who you're created to be, identity, know where you came from, history, know where you're going, destiny, know what you're leaving behind, legacy. And it's all because God created you. That's why there's a tattoo right there that says Rhythm of Life with a little guitar with wings on it. Because when you get in that rhythm of life, you talked about where did I start? I finally made the decision when I was about 40 years old. I said, I'm going to go be what God created me to be without anybody else telling me what to do. And my success, you have to talk about it and describe it using the vocabulary of the divine, because when you do that, you get in alignment, you find that rhythm. It's like the heavens part and God puts his hand on you, and the blessings that come from that are amazing. And that to me is the essence of resiliency.
Yeah.
You hang in there like a hair in a biscuit, man.
Yeah, I like that, man. Almost like I was not familiar with that verse. So, but the Bible's amazing. You read it over and over and over again.
I always tell people, read the parts you didn't highlight.
Yeah.
Read the stuff you didn't underline.
Yeah.
We love those,
They call it living word because every time you read it, it's based on where you are in your life. It has a whole different perspective.
My late friend Jack Taylor, he used to say, inherent in a word from God is the power to perform it. So when God's talking to you, it's not an empty promise. Every day, you're a fulfillment of prophecy, you're a fulfillment of purpose, you're a fulfillment of promise, and all those things. And that's a good reason to get out of bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you need one,
yeah.
We all do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes you take the next breath, the next step.
Well, man, I appreciate you being here.
Thanks, buddy.
And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, we'll definitely do it again. As you know, we got some great sponsors on the show: Smith & Wesson Firearms, Vortex Optics, Gators Eyewear, BioPro. Speaking of physical resiliency, you've been working out. I know you. Every time I talk to you, you're kind of on the fence.
I'm always I'm here and there. I come and go. I tore with the labrum in my shoulder. Mm-hmm. You know, when you get to that age where you go to the doctor and he's like, "What'd you do?" And you're like, "I woke up." So I turned back into a puddle of goo, and so now I'm back. I've been doing the peptide thing, and I'm back to where I can do push-ups again and things like that. So
Have you had surgery?
Working on it. No, and I've fought to do it.
So we need to get you in touch with BioAccelerator, the stem cell company I'm partnered with in Colombia. Eric Scoffer, CEO there, amazing.
I'd love to do it.
Get you down there. It's something like a torn labrum or something like that. Life changing, amazing. BioPro is like all natural peptide. It's a hormone replacement, and it's USADA approved. Like a lot of UFC athletes are using it. It's incredible. And there's a daytime, nighttime formula. Nighttime formula really helps me sleep, especially traveling on the road. And then, like I said, with Smith & Wesson, we're trying to pick what we're going to have for you. And we can look at some different guns, but this is the new CSX E-Series. It's basically everyday carry, and it has 17 plus one, so 18 rounds.
I love that gun.
Yeah,
it's hard to believe
small.
that they got that many rounds in there.
It's crazy, and it has really good purchase in the grip, and it shoots super flat. I got a Vortex Defender on it, so I love this gun. I've been kind of rotating it back and forth with my equalizer on what to do for EDC. But
I love that for EDC.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and that to me is I've used a Glock 19 as an EDC for a long time. This right here, I mean, that's handy. When you showed it to me, I said, because I got little hands, I got small hands, I got my mother's hands, and it's like that thing fits.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
That thing fits. That's incredible.
We'll get out and shoot it, so we'll give you your option, but I think that's a good choice.
I don't disagree with you. Thank you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I got to get better sponsors.
Yeah,
that's a pretty good one.
Smith & Wesson is awesome. I've become such good friends with the leadership there. Yeah. Kyle Tingle and Dave and Mark Smith, the CEO. They're just great people, man. They're your type. They're your people. You love them. So, yep. But
thank you.
Other than that, man, what do you got next?
Man, what have I got next? Watch Chad.com, or it sounds like an OnlyFans. I am my OnlyFan. Yeah. Watch Chad.com's got my tour schedule out there doing music and comedy, and I'm getting real strategic about where I go.
Okay.
And but yeah, you can go to chadprather.com, and I'd love for people to check out the Chad Prather Show. We're doing it every day.
We'll put it all in the show notes. Yeah. So below. But,
having fun doing it.
Cool, man. We'll keep asking you to come back out on this.
I love it, dude. Thank you, man.
All right. Well, till next time, guys. If you have not done so yet, like, comment, subscribe, and share this. We need to share this. Share what Chad's doing. His voice, his incredible voice, incredible friend, and his incredible patriot, man. That's good.
Thank you.
This world is blessed to have you.
Thank you.
All right, if you have not already done so, please join our Patreon family. Guys, join Patreon. It can be as low as $5 a month, up to $100. It's probably one of the best ways you could support this show and keep it going. And besides that, you're going to get tons of bonus content, not just extra stuff based on, maybe extra 5 minutes of podcast. We got like classes on self-defense. We got stuff on firearms. We're going to have American history classes. We're going to have tons of stuff from our former guests that are coming in and chiming in, just being part of providing an amazing content. And one of the things you could do is you could request a question be asked at a White House press briefing. So Richie McGinnis is over at the White House. He's going to be in the press briefings, and we're going to be letting our Patreon members send questions in that we could potentially ask at a White House press briefing. I'll be jumping on a Zoom call once a month with premier Patreon members and do an hour-long conversation with you guys. So look forward to seeing you there. Thanks for your support. Stay resilient, and God bless. Hey, what's up, Resilient family? I am so grateful for each of you who tune in every week to hear our episodes. We have such incredible guests and topics that I am passionate about, our team's passionate about, and we could not do it without you. So we're thankful for you. We love you. We appreciate you locking arms with us to be more informed, to become a more resilient community. And I want to invite you to become a tighter part of that community by joining us on Patreon. If you go to our show notes below, you can click the link and get dialed into our Patreon and get extra content weekly. You can join for $15 a month and get behind-the-scenes footage, get closer access to me. I have monthly Zooms that I'll be doing with some members of the community. And so we'd love to get more involved. Again, go below in the show notes and click the link and join today.